Maybe you own a 1.2 PureTech and you'd like to do a basic service yourself, which is an oil change, and I'm going to show you how. So you want to raise the vehicle, and you also want to choose a day when it's raining, like I have. If you do it on jack stands, make sure it's safe. If you are a really amateur DIY, maybe just get some ramps. Welcome to underneath the vehicle. Yours may have an under tray. If it doesn't, that's where you drain the oil from. That is the oil filter. And to undo the drain, you will need a 8mm Allen bit. You don't necessarily need it in a ratchet. Oh yeah, the oil's very thin, which is why I'm wearing gloves, and I recommend that you do the same. Obviously have something ready to catch it in. I do try to do this cleanly, but the oil is so thin that it's just coming straight out. So you want to try and push in as you undo it to try and stop quite so much spillage of oil. And then at the last minute, I've pre-warmed the engine as well, so the engine oil is nice and warm, which will help it to flow out easier. And then away we come. And then let that drain down into your pan. On the drain plug, there is a crush washer like that. They crush down. Worth replacing that. Obviously the oil is very thin. You saw how easily it leaked as soon as you crack the bolt loose, so you definitely want to replace that. I've got a whole kit here, but it's just worth getting one of those from your local manufacturers when you get your oil and filter as well. So now we've drained out all the oil. You could carry on letting it drain for longer if you want to. More power to you. I'm quite content with that. Seems well drained to me. Get our new washer on there. Get this bolt started. Be careful you don't drop it in the oil. The amount of times I've done that is not funny. There we go. And then you just want to tighten this down. If you have a torque wrench, the torque setting is 42 Newton meters. If you don't have a torque wrench, probably not as tight as you think. Just nip it up and then give it an extra little turn. Let me put it this way. You can always start it. If it leaks slightly, you can tighten it down a little bit more, but it shouldn't take much to seal it if you've used a new crush washer. Do not reuse the old crush washer and then over tighten the bolt trying to seal it, because you strip out the threads. I've seen people do that and make an absolute mess of it and ruin your day, possibly week. Okay, let's see how tight this one here is. There we go. Oh, there she goes. Just try and let it drain out. You're going to get oil on your hands probably anyway. You can just like tap a screwdriver or something through the bottom. I know some people do that to let all the oil drain out. I don't personally like to do that, but there isn't really anything wrong with it. There we go. Just double check right now that there's no seal left on there. There is not, which is great. Now we just pop the new filter on. There's the part number of the filter that I'm using. Pre-fill the filter. Screw it on. Once it's tight, give it an extra 3/4 of a turn, just once it nips up. And I like to put a little bit of oil just on the top there. Just stops it from sticking for the next person that gets it off. Don't over tighten it, especially if you're going to be doing the next oil change. Do yourself a favor. So let's pre-fill this bad boy. So precariously take this over to the car. There you go, stopped, 3/4 of a turn. So this bit here, you kind of want at the back there. I reckon that's about it. You can kind of feel it, you know, just starts to feel about tight. Again, often not as tight as you think. You can start the vehicle, just start it, run it for 5 or 10 seconds, stop it. If you see leaks, you know, just give it a little bit extra. You can always tighten it more, but if you over tighten it, fine, it might not leak. But oh man, can you struggle to get these off sometimes, and it's not in a great area here. You can kind of only just about get on the bottom, and if you've not got the special sockets, which I have, but you might not, you might struggle to get it off again. So less is more. So this engine takes 3.25 litres, so you want to add in a little bit more, and that's for the engine sump and filter. Obviously I filled the filter from this container, so I just want to take that down so that there's 1.75 litres left, and then there should be enough oil in it. Try not to be messy as well. If you do spill a little bit, it's not the end of the world, but just try and clean it up. And then if the engine ever does develop an oil leak, you won't be confused by spilled oil from old oil changes. More common than you think. Okay, that is full of engine oil now. So we're ready to start it now and then check for leaks. Okay, make sure we're neutral, handbrake up. And then we just want to... Is there an oil light on this? There is. So we want to watch the oil light. Let me show you that again. We want to watch that the oil light goes out. If it doesn't go out quickly, turn off the engine and do some checks. There you go, she never even came on. You hear the engine note just change slightly. That's good. Very good. Now we'll check it for leaks. There we go. Sump, nice and clean. Bottom of the filter, no dripping, everything's nice and good there, so we don't have any leaks, which is great news. So that's it, that is how you change the oil. Now, while you've got it up is also a great time to inspect the rest of your car. So you just want to look for stuff like that. The exhaust hanger here is completely detached and rusted through and broken. Do we want to wait for the exhaust to fall off or have other problems before we rectify that? Well, that's your choice, but that's why it's just good to have a look around the whole car as well and just see if there's any other issues that need identifying, like leaks or worn suspension components, bits of the exhaust, etc. Just check the oil level. We are hard to see really, isn't it, on the camera. So the oil level is spot on there, just below that dot near the top. So that's perfect. Job done. It's also worth checking it while you're here, if you can, is just open up the cap and just have a look at the top of your belt here, your timing belt. You can see it. It's just in there. And just try and see if your timing belt has got any cracks or wear in it. This one here is not looking too bad. It was actually done very recently, but you can see all that grainy stuff on the top of it. That's a sign of degradation, and that's why putting the correct oil in these cars is really, really important. So this is the part number that Peugeot Citroën list for this, B712312, which is the 0W30. And then it also lists like a B712290, which is a 5W30, but this is the preferred specification for it. It's very important to put the right oil in these with the wet belt. You can't just put anything in it, because you can cause the wet belt to prematurely deteriorate. And if it snaps, that is bye-bye engine time. So be careful. So this engine had exactly 2.5 litres, that's what I drained out of it. It should have 3.25 litres, which means this burns 0.75 litres of oil, which actually means that this would have been, I think, just below the dipstick. So it's very important to check your oil between services as well. It's not uncommon for these engines to burn oil, and or you'd kick yourself, wouldn't you, if you blew up your engine just because it needed a little bit of oil. So that's worth checking as well.